Hare Krishna. Welcome to our Sunday class. I'm going to turn off this heater. It's a little noisy. Today is March 7th, 2021, and I'm in Gainesville, Florida. So we're going to begin today, I believe, in verse 13. Yes, Krishna is leaving Hastinapur. Krishna came for the battle of Kurukshetra, and then the Bhagavatam talks a lot about that, especially through the eyes of Bhishma, who's on the bed of arrows about to leave this world. And even before that, we heard about the funeral arrangements in chapter 7. This is chapter 10. The funeral arrangements and how Ashwatthama how he did kill the 5 sleeping sons of Draupadi, and he was arrested, and how he then attacked with a Brahmastra. And so finally, when all the violence is over and the funeral arrangements are performed, the Pandavas and all their relatives and friends go down to the Ganges, the Ganga, for the funeral arrangements. So all this has happened. Then Yudhishthira is lamenting, and no one can console him. So then Bhishma teaches him. Bhishma, of course, we hear about Bhishma, how he remembers Krishna in beautiful verses, and then Kunti Devi offers her prayers. So all this has gone on, and now Krishna's finally leaving. He's leaving Hastinapur. He came for the battle. The battle took place. It changed the world forever. And of course, the aftermath of the battle, so much happened, so much lamentation and ceremonies and final attacks and prayers, and all this has gone on, and now it's over, and Krishna's going back to Dwarka. So this verse says, Sarve te nimishai rakshais tamanudruta chetasaha vikshantaha. So Sarve te, all of them, vikshantaha, were staring at Krishna. Their eyes were fixed on Krishna. Animishai rakshais, with unblinking eyes. Nimisha means blinking. Naimisha Aranya is from the word Nimisha. Aranya is forest, so it's the forest of where the devas, the demigods come, and it said that demigods don't blink like we do. And so therefore, Animisha, anyway, can refer to the demigod. So Sarvete and Nimishai Rakshai, so all of them with unblinking eyes, Tam Anu, following him, following Krishna, Druta Chaitasa, because their hearts were melting. Their minds and hearts were just melting with love. And Vikshanta, they were snaring. So both with their eyes and with their literally flowing, like Druta means like flowing, or their hearts were flowing toward him, their eyes were going to him. And they're staring at him, sneha sambandha, they're fully bound to Krishna by love, by affection, sneha sambandha, and vichelus, they moved about, tatra tatra, like here and there. So vichelus tatra tatra means they were just not even necessarily had somewhere to go. They were just agitated, they were lamenting, they were crying, their hearts were overflowing with love for Krishna. So they were just sort of, everyone was kind of moving about, not really sure what to do. So this is the scene described here at 1:10:13. And then the next verse. Nirundhanud galad vashpam utkantya devaki sute Niryatya gara no bhadramiti syad bandhavakstriyaha. So Nirundhan Udgalad. So Udgalad Bashpa means tears were flowing. Prabhupada says overflowing. Udgalad Bashpam and Nirundhan. So they were checking this. Utkantyat. They were filled with anxiety. The word Utkantya is an interesting word. And let's tell you what the Sanskrit dictionary says about that word, Utkantya. Oh, whoops, I left a letter out. So the dictionary said no matches found. Utkantya means desire, longing for, like intense longing. Utkantya, so out of that intense longing and anxiety, their tears are overflowing. And this happened Devaki Sute Niryanti, when Devaki Suta, Krishna, son of Devaki, was leaving. He was coming, literally, he was leaving Agaran, the house, or the palace. So you can imagine Krishna is preparing to leave. He's inside the palace saying goodbye to his sister, to so many other people. Everyone is waiting. His chariot is waiting. And then he comes out of the palace, headed toward his chariot to leave. And then people just break down. Their tears are flowing. They're crying because Krishna, they know it's time for him to leave. But then they say, no, bhadramiti syat. But they checked their tears. Nirundan. They checked their tears because they didn't want it to be inauspicious. Like, Krishna's leaving, we should thank him, we should celebrate him. Let's not spoil it by everyone just crying. We have to give him a happy farewell, because it won't be auspicious because of course in that culture they're very, very careful about different kinds of signs and omens, because someone's leaving on a trip. So some omen could indicate the trip won't be auspicious, or something bad may happen on the trip. So they're very sensitive to that. So they said, no, bhadramiti syad. So bandhavaksriya. So the women of the family were saying, don't do anything which could indicate an inauspicious trip. Like, we can't cry. We have to check our tears. Be happy. We don't want Krishna, the last thing he sees when he leaves is that we are all miserable. I mean, that's not going to give him a good trip. So it's very interesting. They love Krishna so much, and yet they're concerned not to have anything inauspicious occur or in any way trouble Krishna. So that's the idea in this verse. Mridanga, Shanka, various. So here are all the instruments. Mridanga, you know what that is. Actually, Mrid means mud. Anga means body. So it's clay. So the Mridanga literally means clay body, which of course, I guess in those days they didn't have Balaram Mridangas, synthetic materials. But so that's what Mridanga actually means, clay body. Shanka, conch shells, various shots, kettle drums, veena, the veena, tampura, and sitar, they also call it. Panava, it's a kind of flute. Gomukha literally means cow face. So the dictionary thinks it could have been like different types of horns that you blow. And so Dunduri, it's a kind of drum. These drums are kind of, I think they're onomatopoeic. Some of these names are kind of what the drums sound like Dunduri, like that. So it's a Dunduri drum, then the Anaka, and the Ganta means bells, sort of like an old word for like kartals or bells. Nadur, they all sounded Dundubayas also. So this is a drum which the name is Dundubi, which is, I think it's very much onomatopoeic. In other words, the name is the sound of the drum, Dundubi, 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 Dundubi. So it's kind of this. So also, in other words, there's a band that it's not just, my view, it's not just like, what's the word, like chaotic. Everyone's just making, the biggest, as loud a sound as they can. It's just like, no, cacophony. It's being played very beautifully. If you look at Western military bands, it's They basically use the same instruments, bugles, drums, different kinds of drums. And so it's a very beautiful sound. You could say practically a military sound, because these are all Kshatriyas. So it's something like a military band. Then prasada shikararudha kuru naryo dijiksaya. So with the desire to see Krishna, the kuru narya, that means the kuru naris, the kuru women who had risen, who had climbed up to the top of the palace, prasada shikara. Shikara means like, it can be the dome. It just means that, the highest point. They went to the highest point in the palace to look down. Why? Because down in the street, there was, all these big animals and horses. I mean, these horses were really big. They probably could have elephants also. And so it was, when elephants or horses have to relieve themselves, it's, you don't want to be there. So the ladies, they went to the top, they got a great view, and and Krishna could see them. It wasn't that high. Krishna could see them. They could see Krishna. It was kind of a lot more peaceful up there. So Vabrashu Kusumai Krishnam, they showered Krishna with flowers, literally. Vabrashu Kusumai Krishnam, they showered Krishna with flowers. Prema Brida Smitekshana, and they were glancing at him with smiles that were both loving and shy. Because if you love someone, you just sort of reveal you love them, that's not so shy. But at the same time, they were shy. So it's kind of this, they were sort of shy. They were shy because they were revealing how much they loved Krishna. So prema vrida, love and shyness, smita, smiling, ikshanaha, with glancing, with loving and bashful or shy smiles. So this is all going on. The next verse. Sitata patrang jagraha mukta dama vibhushitam ratna dandam gudakesha. So Arjuna Gudakesha took an umbrella, or technically a parasol. It wasn't, parasol, they call it in English. Parasol means for the sun. Parasol. It wasn't an umbrella for the rain. It was a parasol. It was same thing, but meant to shield someone from the sun. So Sita means white. Sita atapatram, a white umbrella. Jagraha, he took. Mukta dami bhusitam, it was, it's danda here. Ratna dandam, danda here, it's a stick, but here it means handle. Like the handle of an umbrella. Ratnam was jeweled. There was a jeweled handle. Vibhushitam, decorated with pearls. Jeweled handle decorated with pearls. And priyak priyatamasyaha. And so Arjuna, who was dear to Krishna, did it for his most dear person, who was Krishna. Priya priyatamasyaha. So Uddhava satyaki shaiva vyajane paramadhute vikiryamana kusumai reje madhupti pati. So Uddhava and Satyaki. Satyaki is a great Yadu warrior. In fact, he was one of the very few people that was not killed at Kurukshetra. We don't hear a lot about Satyaki, but he's an extremely important fighter in the whole Mahabharata story. Very important person from Krishna's Yadu dynasty. So Uddhava and Satyaki, they took up, here the verb jagraha is understood as sort of carried over from the previous verse. They took up fans, paramadbhute, that were most wonderful, like amazing, most amazing fans to fan Krishna. And so Krishna, bikiryamana, being showered, kusumai, with flowers. Literally, like flowers are being scattered all over him. So being showered in this way with flowers, Reje Madhupati Pati, Madhupati, the master of the demon Madhu, which means Krishna. Reje, he shone, he was effulgent, shone, Pati, on the path. So it's not a play on words, but it's a beautiful alliteration. Reje Madhupati Pati, that on the path the Lord of Madhu shone as he was being showered with flowers, and as Uddhava and Satyaki were holding most amazing fans that were fanning Krishna. So let's see, I'll do one more. Ashuyanta shishak satyas tatra tatra dvijairitaha nanurupascha nirgunasya gunatmana. So it's very interesting verse. So true blessings, ashisha means blessings, and satya means they were true. They were going to come true. They were true blessings. Ashuyanta were heard. Ashuyanta were heard. Tatra tatra, here and there. In Sanskrit, the way you say here and there is there and there. It's like our English, here and there. Ashuyanta shishak satya tatra tatra dvijairita, which is very interesting because we would say here and there, but technically here means where you are. And so since the speaker of this verse is not with Krishna, he doesn't say here and there. He says there and there, because all the different places were not where the speaker is. So there's actually some intelligence behind this. So Shuyanta Shishak Satyas Tatra Tatra Dvijairita. And so these blessings were irita, they were uttered by Dvija, the twice born. Dvijairita Nanurupa Anurupascha, and they were not appropriate and they were appropriate. This is very nice, because Krishna is nirgunasya gunatmanaha, because he is nirguna. He has no material qualities, but gunatmana, he's the soul of all qualities. And so there's even here in this very poetic Sanskrit, there is some very serious theology being discussed. Ashruyanta shishak satyas tatra tatra dvijairitaha, uttered by the Brahmins. It was not appropriate because ultimately Krishna is beyond everything and he is the absolute truth. And so we try to find words to glorify him, and that's good. But ultimately, for example, you can read about Krishna in Vaishnava Shastras. You can hear about Krishna from his devotees, and you can understand to some extent. But when you actually meet Krishna, when you actually see Krishna, it's something even much greater. Although that much greater is still something that you basically had the right understanding of, but it takes a lot of realization to really begin to understand Krishna's glories. So therefore, those prayers were na anurupa, not appropriate, because Krishna is so much greater than we can understand from these words. But at the same time, the prayers were appropriate. Nanurupa anurupascha. Why were these prayers appropriate? Because the people uttering them had deep realization, and because it was their duty to glorify Krishna. It was natural to glorify Krishna, and there was nothing else they could do. So it was appropriate that they offer these prayers. At the same time, you could say it's not appropriate or didn't correspond because Krishna has infinite glories. So interesting verse. Maybe one last verse today. Anyonyam asit sanjalpa uttama shloka chetasam kodavendra purakshrinam sarvasuti manoharaha. So there was sanjalpa, there was conversation or like talking, sanjalpa. the dictionary describes as, oh, we have a special Sanskrit tradition has a special code you have to put in. Talking together, conversation, chattering, uproar. So really, it's like the idea is here. It's a big crowd scene. There's all these people and they're talking, and it's this. It's when there's a big crowd and everyone's very excited and there's all this excited talk going on. So that's what there was. That the Anyonyamasi. So among each other, there was this excited, loud, this conversation. Uttama Shloka Chetasang, among people whose minds were fixed on Krishna, Uttama Shloka, Koda Vendra Purakshiyam, and among the women, the Kauravendra Purasriya, the women of the capital city of the Kurus, and Sarva Shruti Mano Haraha. And this sanjalpa, this conversation, this excited talking to each other was more charming, it was more enchanting than all the Vedas. It's very interesting. So it wasn't, quote unquote, just sort of religious prayers. It was just very ecstatic, very excited people just talking to each other, and it was what they were saying was more attractive, it was more charming than all the Vedas. So that's the situation here. Perhaps if there are any questions, I will take a look. That was verse 20. So we did 8 verses at no extra cost to you. I'll just check here and see if we have any questions. So, ¿por qué, in Spanish, why so much history, ancient history? Why not speak? Why doesn't speak of the activities of, that person is quite sound. Let's see if there are any other questions. So, thank you all for your comments. So, Srila Prabhupada mentions in the purport that shyness commands respect from the opposite sex. Does purity look different for males and females in any way? That's an interesting question. Shyness does command respect, and sometimes speaking out commands respect. It depends on, I would say it depends on the situation. That's just my experience, as to use ISKCON's internal language as a male-bodied devotee who has to, speak to many female-bodied devotees. That's the way we talk. I would say that shyness, it can command respect. And sometimes someone speaking, a man or a woman, just speaking intelligently commands respect. So shyness is not the only respectable mood for a woman to be in. That's the one but it all depends on a person understanding time and place, knowing what's appropriate in a particular circumstances. So Nimai from Mexico, I'll translate it. Could you speak a little about Satyaki? What was his relation with Krishna, with the Pandavas? Satyaki, of course, was a Yadu. He was a Yadu, and he was a great, powerful warrior. If you read the battle scenes on the battle in Kurukshetra, he was just a great warrior, undefeatable, and no one could defeat him. So therefore, he survived Kurukshetra. Very important, very powerful warrior, intimate associate of Krishna that we don't often hear about, but he actually is a very important person. So, what online Sanskrit dictionary do you use? Monier Williams from Oxford. That's the standard one. Thank you for listening. And that's it. That's all the questions. So, thank you all very much for listening. I don't think I skipped anything. If I did, apologies. Some, it's a little difficult sometimes to try to find all the questions, and at times something's left out. But I hope that's it. So thank you very much, and hopefully we will be back together next Sunday in Gainesville. Hare Krishna.